Welcome, everybody. Naoki, if you can please display the first slide. Welcome, everybody, to PICHTR's 2023 Forum for the Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative. We are so pleased that you are joining us today. We have folks joining us really from so many different places: Hawaii, US mainland, Pacific Island countries, and abroad as well. So at this point, folks are starting to hop on and join us. We are already at 74 participants. And what I like to do is welcome you to use the chat function to provide us your comments and reactions, not just now, but throughout the entire forum. And to get us started, if you could please introduce yourself. Some of the information you may want to share would be things like your title, your company, where you're calling from. Tell us about any projects and any sort of like resource needs that you may have in particular to projects related to Pacific Island countries. And I'm going to be asking our my co-moderator, Naoki Nagai, to just share some of the responses that we're getting. Hi, Naoki.
Hi, thank you everybody for joining. Yeah, please use the chat feature, get acclimatized to the platform. Introduce yourself if you can on the chat, please.
And as we're waiting for that, I can see that the numbers keep going up. We are already at over 80 participants. Thank you, Leon Weaver, for saying hello. I also want to bring your attention to the Q&A feature of today's forum. It would be just wonderful if you could use the chat feature to share your comments, your reactions, your impressions. And if you could use the Q&A feature for questions that you may have. It makes it a lot easier for us to be able to track your questions and try to answer as many of your questions through the Q&A portion of today's forum, as well as I'm going to be encouraging the panelists. If you see a question that you can answer, go ahead and answer it by typing it in directly. Naoki, back to you. Maybe you can share some of the responses that we're getting.
Yeah, we have so many joining. Lisa Kimura, thank you. Charles Ham, UH Manoa. Yeah, calling from Hawaii. Dave Krapp, Hannah Reed. Well, thank you everybody for joining. You can also try the Q&A, and you can put in your questions anytime. You don't have to wait until Q&A section so that you don't forget the good questions that comes up in your mind. Please put it in anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you, Naoki. Okay, we are approaching 100 people. I think that's a really good number and we can get started. So Naoki, next slide, please. First off, I would like to thank our sponsor, Island Insurance Companies, for supporting PICHTR. You're very generous and we very much appreciate it. Next slide, please. So a very quick backdrop on this forum. The 2023 forum is actually the second one. The first one, the inaugural forum, was held last year in 2022. And that forum really sought to engage stakeholders in meaningful and action-oriented conversations towards this concept of how can we develop joint clean energy and climate adaptation and resilience projects in Pacific Island countries. For the 2023 forum, we want to take it a step further, and we actually want to really facilitate conversations that are going to help on working on joint clean energy and climate adaptation projects. So to tell us a little bit more about that, as well as to provide some welcome opening remarks, I would like to turn it over to Ian Kitajima, President of the Pacific International Center for High Technology Research, in short, PICHTR. Ian.
Thank you, Veronica. Aloha, mai kako, everyone. Welcome to the Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative, the 2023 Forum. I would like to thank and acknowledge the excellent lineup of speakers and panelists that are making today's forum possible. In particular, I would like to thank Noriyuki Shitaka, who's the Cabinet Secretary for Public Affairs, Prime Minister's Office of Japan, who are providing special opening remarks. PICHTR's board member and forum keynote speaker, Suzanne Vares-Lum, president of the East-West Center, and Akihiro Okuchi, Deputy Director, General Economic Affairs Bureau and Ambassador in charge of Economic Diplomacy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan, also a keynote speaker. Shitaka-san, Ms. Vares-Lum, and Okuchi-san remarks will highlight the mutual importance of Pacific Islands to the United States and Japan. We will then hear from 3 panels. Panel 1, governmental. Oops, sorry. My notes just disappeared for a second here. Sorry.
Oh.
Not a problem. So panel 1, governmental and international agency activities in Pacific Island countries, or PICs, to tackle climate change. Panel 2 will be insights from recent success cases of climate projects in the PIC. And panel 3 will be upcoming climate project opportunities in the PIC. The ultimate goal of today's forum is to bring a network of interested parties together to meaningfully explore ways of working on joint clean energy and climate adaptation resiliency projects in the PIC. In closing, thank you to our speakers and panelists for making today's forum possible. I hope you walk away with a clearer understanding of the resources, players, and opportunities for realizing climate adaptation resiliency projects in the PIC. We appreciate you for being part of today's forum. Mahalo. Back to you, Veronica.
Thank you, Ian. Mahalo, and mahalo to all of the speakers. I have to say, I'm so pleased. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. To get us started, I would like to turn it over to Noriyuki Shikata. He is the Cabinet Secretary for Public Affairs at the Prime Minister's Office in Japan, who is going to be providing special remarks to get us started. I would like to turn it over to you, Shikata-san.
Good morning. Aloha from Tokyo. Ohayo gozaimasu. Well, thank you very much for giving me the floor. It is my greatest pleasure to attend the second virtual forum on Pacific Islands Climate Collaborative, again from Tokyo, after last year's conference. The weather in Tokyo is still a bit chilly, but we are expecting to see the first bloom of sakura in a week or so. Though we live in different climate zones, we share the common determination to tackle climate change across the Pacific. As for PICHTR, Japan has been proactively supporting its initiative for the past 4 decades. Congratulations on the 40th anniversary of PICHTR. And this is a very symbolic collaboration between Japan and the United States, dating back to the President Reagan and Prime Minister Nakasone meeting in 1986. I too have been closely engaged in the wonderful activities of PICHTR since the mid-1990s, including the launch of the Hawaii-Okinawa Clean Energy Corporation in 2009. I was director in charge of that project. I too have been, I particularly would like to thank Chairman Denis Teranishi for his tremendous leadership through all these years. From October 2021, I served under Prime Minister Kishida as Cabinet Secretary for Public Affairs. I would like to take this opportunity to touch upon a few salient aspects of Prime Minister Kishida's approach to clean energy and climate change. First of all, Japan's goal is to reduce GHG emissions by 46% by fiscal year 2030 from fiscal year 2013 levels, aligned with the long-term goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. In order to do so, under Prime Minister Kishida's leadership, Japan has been propelling its green transformation efforts. Most recently, we adopted the basic plans for achieving green transformation last month, which aims to implement the following 2 initiatives. Number 1, in order to secure stable energy supply, in addition to thorough energy conservation, we'll promote decarbonization efforts toward green transformation. This includes a shift to decarbonize power sources such as renewable energy, including hydrogen, ammonia, and nuclear power, which will also contribute to improving energy self-sufficiency of Japan. And number two, in order to realize green transformation, we'll implement growth-oriented carbon pricing, which includes bold investment support by issuing green transformation economic transition bonds, giving green transformation investment incentives through carbon pricing, and make use of new financial instruments. Through such initiatives, we'll make best use of new clean energy technologies and aim to aggressively achieve decarbonization, stable energy supply, and economic growth at the same time. In addition to such domestic initiatives, we obviously need to promote international cooperation to tackle global climate change challenges. Prime Minister Kishida will host G7 Hiroshima summit. This May, my background is coming from Hiroshima. I believe climate change will be one of the most important agenda items of this G7 summit, and we wish to redouble efforts in this vital agenda. As you are aware, many countries in the Pacific Islands are disproportionately suffering largely from extreme weather and experiencing reduction of land due to climate change. As for Japan's support for the Pacific Islands, Japan has been proactively supporting the capacity building of the Forum Island countries to cope with the impacts of climate change, including continuous support for adaptation, strengthening resilience against disasters, such as through resilient infrastructure, and supporting deployment of renewable energy. Such collaboration between Japan and the Pacific Islands, along with the United States, shall further deepen. PICHTR can play even bigger role in this strategic collaboration, which is one of the concrete examples of our free and open Indo-Pacific. I hear that PICHTR could be one of the promising candidates as a hydrogen hub in the US. And Japan is naturally supportive for such development surrounding PICHTR. Let me finish my remarks by thanking all the people who contributed to realizing this second virtual forum. I believe today's virtual forum and the collaboration brought by PICHTR will contribute to an even stronger ties among Japan, the US, and the partners in PICs, leading to concrete positive results in a joint endeavor to tackle climate change and promote clean energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Noriyuki Shikata. It is such a pleasure to have you here again. Really appreciate your support of PICHTR and overall Japan's and the US collaboration on clean energy, tackling the climate crisis, and support for Pacific Island countries in terms of helping them adapt with more clean energy as well as resilience. So again, thank you for your kind words and special remarks. Next, I would like to introduce and turn it over to PICHTR's board member, as well as president of the East-West Center, Suzanne Bar-Islam, who is one of our keynote speakers. Suzanne, may I please turn it over to you? Thank you.
Aloha mai kako. Thank you so much, Veronica, and thank you, Ian, and also shout out to Dennis as well for your leadership, and thank you, Noriyuki-san, for your special presentation from Japan. As you are in virtual space from Japan, I am sending you all a warm aloha mai kako from Hawaii, here in Manoa, at the lovely East-West Center, our 21-acre campus that was established by President Eisenhower in 1960, which has a lot of our Pacific Islands, regional, Japanese alumni, of our 70,000 alumni out there. So very excited to be joining you today and being part of this virtual conference on a very important issue, the Pacific. And I'm grateful to be on the PICHTR board and the role that it's played and over the past several decades. just like the East-West Center, this vision of elevating and building bridges among people and nations. I say it's wonderful to be broadcasting from Hawaii, not just because of the special place it is, but also it is part centered here in the Pacific, a bridge and a crossroads to the rest of the world, and really from my ancestral homeland. You know, the Pacific Ocean, we all know, we wouldn't be on here, is really the largest and the deepest ocean on Earth, and really spanning 60 million square miles, if we can imagine, and extends in some areas even tens of thousands of feet below the surface. We think of this immense ocean maybe sometimes on a map, and we look at it not realizing that if you actually put all of the Earth's land masses together, it would still be smaller than the entire Pacific Ocean. You know, today we look at it, the needs and the challenges that exist in the Pacific that I want to touch upon, but we don't think about is the home of our ancestors, the Kanaka Maoli, who came here from other parts of the Pacific on using wayfinding, traditional navigation. This Pacific has been home to this super highway. And I was just on a conference yesterday where we talked about science and technology, the use of science and technology of our ancestors to use that super highway and the stars and the seas and the currents for navigation. Really was what I call the first high technology research, but it was indigenous knowledge that was passed down and now is being revived again. And many of these communities across the Pacific that I call not just small island nations, but large ocean nations that have thrived using the ocean, cultivating the land and the people, taking care of the communities, the kuleana, as we say in Hawaii, which is a responsibility of everyone in a community to make sure that you take care. And in Hawaii, we say malama, which is to take care of the land and sea. Now, the Pacific, as we know, has been a spotlight. So here at the East-West Center, you know, since 1960, we've been engaging with US, Asia, and Pacific leaders, bringing them together through long-term education, impactful dialogues. But in 1980, the Pacific Island Conference of Leaders, Pacific Islands Development Program, was established here by Ratu Sir Kamisese Mara, the first Fijian Prime Minister, also East-West Center alum, who started the Pacific Islands Forum, which did not include US territories in the state of Hawaii, which is the reason why the Pacific Islands Development Program, Pacific Island Conference of Leaders, was established in 1980 to address all of the issues as an entire Pacific. And as a Pacific Island Forum recently put out their strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, because all of it is interrelated. So the challenges we know very well that we just heard on climate change being the #1 existential threat to the Pacific, as well as the challenges with economics, healthcare, education, you know, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Those are all significant challenges, but with those challenges are great opportunities that I think opportunities to convene like PICHTR is now to look for solutions, and those solutions rest in the people. And it's because of that reason we established a strategy last year that's focused on 5 pillars. #1, that we need to develop and equip the leaders who can really take on these challenges. So all of you on here, the 115 participants, are leaders looking for change, ways in which we can all be change makers to find these solutions to the challenges. And the second thing is that we convene impactful dialogues. And I mentioned last year we convened the Pacific Island Conference of Leaders, which was the first time since 2016 that we convened these Pacific leaders together. And I'm going to touch a little bit upon what I heard from some of those convenings. The third thing in our strategy and pillar is that we're partnering with the Pacific as we do the entire Indo-Pacific, because today there's certainly a spotlight on the Pacific because of climate change and also because of geopolitical strategic competition that's happening in the Indo-Pacific, in the Pacific region. And the fourth area is we foster environmental solution through our research. We do a lot of research along, you know, and partnering, of course, with PICHTR in the Pacific to find solutions. And the last area is supporting good governance, because we can do all of this research and we can put a spotlight on the challenges of climate change. But without good governance, we can't ensure good policies and actions or solutions that, just like we're trying to figure out now, that will really, really help to really go against or combat some of these challenges. So the first thing I wanted to say, last year was, I'd say, the year of the Pacific for East-West Center. It always has been, but it really much more so. We started the year last year as, rolling out the Pacific Matters for America and America Matters for the Pacific in our congressional center with the Pacific Island Caucus in Congress. And, just sharing with the world about, especially the United States, why the Pacific matters in terms of trade, investment, employment, business, diplomacy, security, education, tourism, and the people-to-people connections between the United States and Pacific Island countries. We highlighted that Pacific economies alone combined 39 billion GDP. And of course, we know that the role that they play in providing a lot of the Pacific gold, which is tuna. And that's another issue in terms of IUU. So in that first rollout, right after that, our Pacific Islands Development Program was able to join the Pacific Island Forum in Fiji, Suva, Fiji, where they were able to discuss and roll out that strategy of the Blue Pacific continent. And then we had a roundtable with UN heads of mission from the Pacific to discuss issues with our congressional leaders. And then in the fall was the Pacific Island Conference of Leaders. Following that, I was invited to the White House and to moderate a dialogue with Secretary Blinken and Pacific Island leaders. The reason why I share with you this is that I'd like to just spotlight some of the things I heard, and I know we have a lot of Pacific Islanders on this call, so I look forward to hearing some of the comments. But some of the comments that I heard from many, and this was reinforced by other congressional leaders, U.S. congressional leaders, that we shouldn't talk about the Pacific without the Pacific. So not about us without us. And that we need to be aware that there is a Pacific way in when we engage with the Pacific. As I mentioned, the first Fijian Prime Minister, Ratu Serkamisesemara, really coined that term, the Pacific way. And when I was in Fiji during the Pacific Island Forum, I heard one of the leaders say, one of the prime ministers talk about Pacific leadership and regionalism. So when we're looking at solutions, making sure that we're partnering with Pacific Island leaders, one of the leaders said, that that probably gives it away, Samoa Prime Minister Fiame Mataafa said that she's a strong advocate for regionalism. Regionalism meaning the body of the Pacific Island Forum or the Pacific Islands Conference of Leaders. Because it's about who we are as one people of a Blue Pacific continent, one people with its own unique attributes by country and place. She said that societies are communal and based on the collective, and she continued, so what was the Pacific way? It's an approach that the Blue Pacific is the Pacific, she said, is our turf, and we're responsible for this. We're custodians. So not just being viewed as victims, but as victors, as people who have solutions to some of these problems. So just sharing more some of the what the Pacific Island leaders from all of those convenings that I have had the privilege to be able to hear the voices that I'd like to share with you. So from a Pacific Islands nations perspective, as I said, the main challenge center on climate, the economies, especially after COVID-19, the ocean, the biodiversity, and the challenges that are there with IUU, and of course, infrastructure investments that are sustainable. One of the quotes also made by a Pacific Island leader was that the ocean is the Pacific bloodline. It determines our culture, contributes to our livelihood, and the pollution and sea level rise and IUU have significant impacts on our atolls and islands. And peace and security really are central to sustainable development. A secure Blue Pacific is an insurance policy, and the leaders expressed that they cannot lose tuna to IUU and tourism to instability. And that's a great point when you think about the amount of tourism that many of these countries rely on. And as was mentioned, natural disasters like cyclones can destroy in one night what may have took 5 to 10 years to develop in the Pacific. So many of them said, we have said the Pacific matters for America and America matters for the Pacific, then we have to step it up. So one of the things that came out of the first ever White House Pacific Island Summit was a first ever Pacific Partnership Strategy, which outlines really 4 points that the United States will pursue objectives. Number 1, a strong Pacific Islands partnership, which means they're going to, the commitment to increase presence and activities in the Pacific to build the US capacity support to the Pacific. We've seen that in dollars and diplomatic presence and the presence of USAID and the Peace Corps. Also, the second point objective is that the United States region will be connected, helping them to connect to the world by bolstering this regionalism, again, the Pacific Island Forum being the primary regional structure in the Pacific, and elevate the Pacific around the world. Also coordinating with allies and partners, which is what we're doing right now with Japan. And the third objective is really to have a resilient Pacific Island regions prepared for the climate crisis and other 21st century challenges. So really giving commitments to combating the climate crisis and building climate resilience in the Pacific, and supporting marine conservation, maritime security and sovereign rights. And again, supporting good governance and human rights of all people. And the fourth objective, of course, is empowering and prosperous Pacific Islanders. So creating economic opportunities, forging connections, and bolstering health architecture and health screening, and partnering the people-to-people ties, which is something that we do here at the East-West Center, and which is key and critical. And by the way, we just launched a new Ripple program, Resilient Pacific Island Leaders, which is with the additional ad that we got from Congress, is a new U.S. leadership development program for up and coming leaders. So if you know of any Pacific Island leaders, if you go to our website, you can see the opportunity to sign up. It will be here in Hawaii and in Washington, D.C., allowing them to look at some of how do we solve these challenges. So I know I've shared a lot, and I appreciate your attention, but I think it's important to really see and hear what is the Pacific saying. Elevate those voices and share it. Partner with the Pacific, partner with one another, ensure that our work is coordinated in a way that makes sense, and to address the needs and desires for the Pacific, because we will all gain by partnering with the Pacific in a way that is the Pacific way. So thanks so much for your time and attention, and thank you for this wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, Suzanne Bar-Islam, for those wonderful, remarks. And it's such a pleasure to have you be president of the East-West Center and really continue its legacy of, being a connector, and really appreciate you sharing with us the broader strategy around the Pacific, how the U.S. and Japan can support and collaborate with Pacific Island countries. Those were just excellent remarks. Next, I would like to turn it over to our second keynote speaker. He is the Deputy Director, General Economic Affairs for the Bureau and Ambassador in Charge of Economic Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. He is Akiro Okochi, and I would like to welcome him to please provide us his keynote remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. Good morning, and aloha for everybody. Let me first thank PICHTR for this opportunity and commend PICHTR's efforts in realizing this initiative. I was also honored to be at the East-West Center in Honolulu to attend the EPIC meeting last December. This is a great opportunity to promote Japan-US cooperation on clean energy, clean climate change adaptation, and resilience in the Pacific Islands, not to mention with the other partners in the region. In addition to Shikata-san's keynote speech, allow me to introduce how Japan is engaging in this field, especially in the context of Japan-US bilateral cooperation and IPEF. I want to first direct your attention to the Japan-US Clean Energy Partnership, otherwise known as JUSEP. JUSEP is a cornerstone of bilateral clean energy cooperation between Japan and US, and it was launched following the Japan-US core partnership agreed at the Japan-US Summit in April 2021. JUSEP aims to promote Japan-US cooperation in the field of climate change, including decarbonization transition support to developing countries. Through this partnership, Japan and the US have engaged in a series of discussions to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. Our goal is to help Indo-Pacific nations accelerate their decarbonization efforts through utilizing clean, affordable, and safe energy technologies to promote a stable energy supply and sustainable growth. To date, we have held 2 plenary meetings, and as a result of our discussions, we have been able to realize a toolkit event targeting Indonesia and provide capacity building assistance on small modular reactors. As we expand our efforts in JUSEP to other countries in the region, including Pacific Island countries, we hope to collaborate with PICHTR and other regional organizations who share our vision. As you were all aware, there is growing momentum for the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, among Japan, the US, and like-minded countries. As the global economy tries to recover following the COVID pandemic and Russia's aggression towards Ukraine, there is an urgent need to ensure sustainable and inclusive growth in the Indo-Pacific region, arguably the source of global growth. The creation of what an ideal economic partnership, one that brings actual tangible benefits to regional partners, would look like in the Indo-Pacific, including, of course, Pacific Island countries, looms large. The IPEF is a potential answer. Launched in Tokyo last May, the framework currently includes 14 countries: Japan, the US, 7 ASEAN members, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, India, and Fiji. At the moment, we are negotiating a text concerning trade, supply chain, clean economy, and fair trade, in total 4 pillars. Among these, Pillar 3, clean economy, might be of particular interest for this seminar. It includes discussions on energy security and energy transition, promotion of decarbonized technology, sustainable land use, technical cooperation, and capacity building support, as well as finance. Japan places importance of making the framework one in which each and every partner can enjoy sustainable benefits. We are striving to achieve concrete benefit as soon as possible. And while Fiji is the only island nation included in the IPEF at this time, the IPEF is an inclusive framework that welcomes the participation of regional partners who share our goals, interests, and ambitions. We hope that through future discussions, the framework will evolve into one that contributes broadly to the region. And in our efforts to achieve a free and open Indo-Pacific, Japan has worked to engage and cooperate with Pacific Island countries, while respecting their regional agenda, and has provided need-based support that make use of Japan's strength. At the 9th Pacific Island Leaders Meeting 2021, also known as PAR9, Japan announced 5 priority areas for its cooperation with Pacific Island countries. Climate change and disaster resilience is one of those agendas. Since then, Japan has provided a wide range of support based on the commitment reached at PAR9. I'd like to touch upon the Pacific Climate Change Center, PCCC, as an example of our cooperative efforts in the area of climate change. Japan established the PCCC in cooperation with a regional institution called the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program. The goal here is to train personnel and develop human capacity to boost climate change resilience in the Pacific Island countries. The PCCC plays an important role in developing human resources in the region. Through the numerous training programs it offers, we hope that the PCCC contributes to capacity building for climate-related ministries and organizations in the Pacific Island countries. Moreover, Japan has been supporting Pacific Island countries install renewable energy infrastructure for solar power, wind power, and hydropower. On February 21st, Japan and UNDP launched a new $36.8 million program to assist Samoa, Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, and Timor-Leste in promoting decarbonization and building climate resilience in their society. Japan intends to take the lead in this area through, for example, harness the strengths of our partnership with like-minded nations, such as the partners in the Blue Pacific, which has already been mentioned in this session. And to conclude, this year, Japan holds the G7 presidency, just as the US is APEC host. The G7 has an increasingly important role in addressing the various challenges facing our world. As G7 host, Japan will take the lead in the G7's collective response to global issues such as climate change. Needless to say, these issues cannot be resolved by the G7 alone and are frequently discussed in the APEC and the IPEC as well. It's our wish to successfully integrate the efforts of each and to promote their respective initiatives. We look forward to catalyzing further cooperation between Japan, the US, and our partner countries in the area of clean energy, climate change adaptation, and resilience in the Indo-Pacific. I hope today's webinar will be a productive meeting for all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akihiro Okochi. Very much appreciate all of your remarks and your support for the Pacific Island region in terms of pursuing clean energy, climate resilience projects. And it's interesting to me that you mentioned the US-Japan Clean Energy Partnership. When I was at the state, this is a partnership that I personally participated in and saw great benefits and great exchange of information between the US and Japan, and very much look forward to continuing to increase collaboration amongst the two countries as well in this broader Pacific region as well. So with that, I would like to again thank all of our keynote speakers and special remarks. And I would like now to move to our first panel. This panel is going to be discussing governmental and international agencies' activities in Pacific Island countries to tackle climate change. First, we will begin by hearing from Daisuke Watanabe. He is the Deputy Director General, Southeast and the Pacific. Sorry, I got Pacific Department. I lost my notes. Japan International Cooperation, JICA. And if I can please turn it over to him. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Daisuke, we cannot hear you. I believe you are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, let me try again. Just a second.
Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, let's start. Yes, aloha, good afternoon and good morning. My name is Watanabe, participating from JICA headquarters, Tokyo. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving me this good opportunity to introduce our activities in the Pacific region. And as you may know, JICA is the Japanese ODA implementing agency providing a bilateral international cooperation, mainly through three schemes, namely ODA loan, and technical cooperation, and grant assistance. So today, I'd like to briefly explain JICA's approach to the Pacific region, mainly focusing on climate change issues. There are 5 priority areas in our activity as shown in the box in the lower half of the slide. And these 5 priority areas were agreed in the 9th PALM meeting held in 2021 as just introduced by Mr. Okochi, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Japan. And among others, namely COVID-19 response and ocean maritime issues and economic development and human resource development, among others. Climate change and disaster resilience is one of the top priorities of our cooperation in this region. Now, let me move on to introduce our cooperation for the mitigation of climate change. As a promotion of renewable energy, we conducted hybrid island program from 2016 to 21, where we tried to promote best mix of diesel power generation and renewable power generation in the Pacific Island countries. And under that technical cooperation project, we also cooperate with Okinawa Electric Power Company to apply their experiences in small island areas in Japan. And after that, since 2021, we started Green Island program, where we focus more on renewable energy as a primary and stable energy source. And my colleague, Mr. Ogawa from JICA will explain further later in the panel 3 session. And we also cooperate capacity development for forest conservation in PNG by improving monitoring system of forest logging. Now, as for the adaptation, as an investment in disaster risk reduction and prevention, we supported planning of river flood control in Fiji, as well as some climate resilient infrastructures in Vanuatu or Solomon and so on. And as a result of our cooperation, for example, the first official endorsement in that region was established as national disaster risk reduction policy in Fiji. And as we also focus our cooperation on Pacific Climate Change Center called PCCC. And this is the building of the Pacific Climate Change Center established in Samoa. And as you can find several logos at the right bottom of that slide, not only JICA, but also other several organizations such as New Zealand government of Samoa, and SPREP, which is the Secretariat of Pacific Regional Environment Program, and so on, have been collaborating for various works there. The PCCC was established in 2019 by JICA's grant assistance, hosted by SPLEP in Samoa. And JICA's cooperation has been for supporting capacity building on climate resilience of many countries in that region through supporting PCCC's program and activity, such as seminars and workshop as introduced in that pictures. While JICA's support is basically based on specific program and project, other participants like New Zealand and Ireland government support operation of PCCC center itself. So this is, I believe, a very good model of collaboration among stakeholders, meaning towards the same purpose of promoting capacity building of climate change in the Pacific region. Each stakeholders and donors and government contribute and supplement each other, providing and based on its own comparative advantages. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for all your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Daisuke Watanabe. It's so interesting, the center that you mentioned on the Pacific Climate Change Center. I look forward to discussing that a bit more during the Q&A with you. Next, I would like to introduce Marisol Perez. She is the Deputy Coordinator, Pacific Islands and Mongolia, U.S. Agency for International Development, who is going to be talking about USAID's activities in Pacific Island countries. Marisol, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Are you able to hear me? Sound issue. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, now we're able to hear you. There was a strong echo, but it appears to be gone.
Good morning, good afternoon. Aloha. Is my sound okay?
Yes, the sound is good now. Thank you, Marisol.
Okay. I will take it as everything is working okay, unless others say otherwise. My name is Marisol Perez. I'm so happy and honored to join you today at the Climate Collaborative for the Pacific Islands. And I'm going to share with you today just some of our main interventions. And I think part of the panel today was supposed to focus on what are some of the considerations, what are some factors that go into our support for climate resilience, which is really what our focus is on. I'm not going to dwell too much on here. I think the keynote speakers at the top really highlighted the importance of the Pacific Island, the size of the Pacific Islands region. And we know what the climate projections are. They're very concerning. You know, the increase in temperatures, the increase in tropical storm intensity, which we are all facing and seeing on the weekly basis, if not monthly, much more frequently, and clearly also the rise in sea levels. For us, some of the things that we definitely consider as we've been expanding at USAID in the Pacific Islands is who else is doing what. We want to be not only collaborative, we want to be cooperative, we want to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. So it's been very important to start teasing out and establishing relationships with a number of our colleagues across the Pacific and also across the world who are interested in investing and supporting the Pacific Islands. This doesn't include only host nations themselves, including Japan, but also multilateral and multi-donor institutions, as well as the private sector. This is really a big area for us that we're trying to make sure is cross-cutting, but is also an area that we can leverage partnerships and resources also from the private sector. I think another factor for us is also not only who is doing what, but what are the different frameworks? What are we able to, triangulate in terms of, where we're all going? And a colleague of mine had mentioned recently at a USAID gathering, we're trying to look at how we can row in the same direction. And I really appreciate SPC's new strategy that really has us all in a canoe, right? And all, again, in a similar vein, going in the same direction. As was mentioned earlier, we have a new Pacific Partnership Strategy. There are about 40 initiatives outlined in a roadmap to that strategy. Out of those 40 initiatives, there are about 8 that are assigned to USAID. So our work is very clearly laid out for us, and the targets are very ambitious. We have a new climate strategy as well that was released last year. As you can see, we are also hopefully realistic, but also ambitious, right? We want to make sure that we are pushing ourselves to make sure that we are setting targets that really are meaningful. So mitigation, CO2 emissions reduced, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that we're somehow collaborating and really leveraging resources and partnerships with the private sector, making sure that we're people-centered. A lot of our work in the Pacific is community-based and really trying to not only work with the nations themselves and what their needs are and be responsive along with and in conjunction with our different partners, but also to look at what is the impact, at the community level, people-centered and people-focused. So I won't read the other ones, but you can see here that we have this new climate strategy. Our administrator has said that really everything is going to be about this strategy. Administrator Power has echoed, I think, a sentiment that many of us feel that when we look at any sector, whether it be governance, education, health, we really are looking also with a climate lens. We have a new strategic framework for the Pacific Islands. And if you see here, the first of the development objectives that we have under the goal to have a democratic, prosperous, and resilient Pacific Island region, or to contribute to that, I should say, and support it. Our first development objective is around community resilience. And as you can see, first and foremost, our first intermediate result is about improving capacity or strengthening capacity to adapt and to respond to climate and disaster impacts for the region and the people in the region. And there are a number of other related intermediate results down that thread, but we're also coupling it or tripling it with resilient economic growth and also strengthening democratic governance. In terms of what we're actually doing, what are the specific activities? We have the Pacific American Fund, which is a 5-year activity that really focuses on strengthening local actions and local capacities. We know that that means in particular extra effort for organizations that have not traditionally worked with larger funds. So we do have a component to not only help them, with their submissions, but also accompany them through the process. And as you can see here, a number of sectors are targeted, and resilience to disasters and climate risks is certainly one of them. We have a number of grants across the different Pacific Islands. USAID supports 12 of the Pacific Islands. And one of the achievements for us has been that we've been able to graduate local organizations, as I mentioned earlier, many who've not normally or recently or in the past received a great amount of funds, to make sure that they're prepared and able not only to receive them, but to use them in an appropriate and efficient and effective manner. We have currently right now, some of you may have also already been aware, but we have a next round of grants, sub-grants, I should say, that are going to focus on climate resilience. This is just an example of what some of our grants do under the Pacific Island funds. So in Micronesia, we have the Kapingamarangi drought and water security, taking a look at how we can improve water storage and backup systems, support the ability of community repair, desalination, and reverse osmosis units, and also promote and support livelihood opportunities to increase households that are coping with these new shocks. We also have the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance at USAID. Unfortunately, they are always very busy with response activities in the Pacific due to this increase in climate shocks and disasters. So this is just an example here in Chuuk, again in Micronesia, as I know one of the target countries that was wanting to be highlighted in today's discussion was in FSM. One of our flagship activities is the Climate Ready activity. And as you can see here, we were looking really at how can we support climate change adaptation policies and laws, improving access to climate change funds, and improving the implementation of climate change adaptation projects. This activity actually will finish this year, and we have a follow-on activity that we're in the process of developing. As you can see here, out of the 12 countries, it works in 11 of the Pacific Island countries. And some of the major achievements for us are, mobilizing or helping support governments and organizations to mobilize over $475 million for Pacific Island countries, with more proposals within the pipeline. So our work is not finished here, and we have been working very closely with the GCF and other organizations to take a look at how we can coordinate and collaborate to strengthen, kind of learn from what we've been doing so far. We've helped countries and regional organizations gain accreditation. And just as those are sort of bigger, loftier goals, but some of the things that we've also accomplished, for example, in Fiji, are working with the chambers of commerce, strengthening private sector engagement, and making sure that they're able to respond in disaster risk management. For instance, having a business continuity plan and green recovery plan. I just wanted to highlight here as well some additional activities that we have that are related to climate, specifically our ISAC activity, Institutional Strengthening Pacific Island Countries, where this activity just finished in the past year. The idea was to boost government capacity to manage their climate finances more effectively. So as they're receiving more resources, making sure that there's an accompaniment for that. And there's also another activity that just got stood up a couple of years ago. So it's called Resilience, and it's about improving governance capacity for disaster management. And it does focus a bit more on infrastructure support. We also have the U.S. Peace Corps, which we are happy to see is, again, reviving presence across the Pacific Island nations. Here in Philippines, where I'm based in Manila, I think we received our first batch to return of Peace Corps volunteers. So we're seeing more and more of that activity happen. This is important because it is very community-based and community localized support through the Peace Corps, through small project assistance in the various countries where the volunteers serve. And I mentioned earlier about the new activity that we have going on, and it is still in procurement. We hope that soon it will be out, but I just wanted to flag here that what we wanted to do in terms of the next iteration of, not only Climate Ready, but ISAC, we wanted to learn lessons from that. We had an evaluation of both activities. You'll see here, these are all publicly available, and we want to focus on continued climate financing for the Pacific Islands and access to that to facilitate that. And we note that in particular of the different capacities, financial management capacity continues to be an area of need. We also have a new executive order from the President Biden's administration focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I think it spoke to me a lot earlier when the East-West Center president was mentioning about, not to us, but with us. And really that resonates for us. And we want to learn and accompany and be with the Pacific Island nation country people and listening very hard with big ears to make sure that whatever is done is really with you, and also in a way that respects not only the diversity and the uniqueness of each and every country, but each and every community. At the end of the day, we're looking for better management and resilience for the regional bodies and national governments to build resilience at the community level. Here I have these slides. I'm guessing we'll probably share all of these to the group afterwards. So I just wanted to flag that although not climate specific, we do have activities sort of related to climate in some way. And some of these are biodiversity across the region or in Papua New Guinea. Also energy, where we have 2 Papua New Guinea activities, including our flagship there, the Papua New Guinea Electrification Project Partnership, PEP, for which we're also being asked to see how we can, expand the learnings and expand that experience across the Pacific. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope that was instructive.
Marisol, that was very instructive. And in fact, I would like to echo the words from President Suzanne Bar-Islam, who thanked you and noted that the Isla Center is going to be partnering with USAID for project governance. And it's interesting, I keep hearing the word governance from each one of the speakers. So hopefully we can have more dialogue around that as well. And love everything that USAID is doing. I really appreciate all the funding, the attention, and like this really broad set of activities and resources. For example, you talked about the focus on equity and inclusion. So really appreciate all the great work that you're doing there. Next, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Motohashi. He is the Pacific Hub Energy Program Coordinator for the World Bank, to please share his presentation and provide us with his remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Veronica. Just checking, can you hear me and can you see the screen okay?
Yes, everything is perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you. I'd like to also start by thanking the organizer PICHTR for this very timely event, which is very much needed in the Pacific region. My name is Mitz, and I'm calling from Sydney. I'm working for the World Bank and covering the energy program of the organization. Today, I'd like to briefly talk about what we do in the region and the challenges and opportunities, particularly of clean energy transition in the region. Just a few words about what the World Bank is and what we do. We are comprising of 5 organs, so to speak, that you see on the screen: World Bank, IFC, MIGA, and ICSID. And when we say World Bank, we usually refer to IBRD and IDA. Jointly in financial year 22 alone, we provided financing to about 70 billion equivalent funds, of which about 10% of that, so 7 billion, went to energy and extractive sector. We are owned by governments around the world, and our beneficiaries are also governments around the world, especially the World Bank part that I'm focusing on in my intervention today. A little bit about the words, a few words about the Pacific region as well. World Bank is working on a subset of the entire Pacific space. We work with 12 countries altogether in the region, but even then, even if this is a subset, it is quite humbling. Just to echo what Suzanne said at the opening, it is very humbling, and we do appreciate the enormity of the challenges and opportunities that this region has, and also the need for a very much tailored kind of approach that we need to take in this region, because the sheer EEZ exclusive economic zone is over 17 million square kilometers, just talking about the World Bank client countries, and that in itself is already larger than the territory of Russia. Just to give you a sense of the scale. I mean, probably I'm not telling you nothing new to this audience, but just reappreciating the enormity of the size, and it's inhabited by about just less than 12 million people scattered around. So reaching the people is, in this environment in itself, is quite significant in terms of challenging. And also in terms of the client countries, we have starting from lower middle income countries all the way to upper medium income or even high income countries that we are serving. So naturally, the needs and opportunities are quite different as well in the region. I'm now showing a pretty busy slide, so you don't need to look at it all together, but I just would like to highlight 3 particular challenges of energy sector that we are trying to address. One is, if you could look at the left bottom bar, the energy consumption per capita in the Pacific is quite significantly below other other countries, other regions. And this reflects partly that energy access remains an unfinished agenda, remains to be an issue in several of the Pacific Island countries. And this is despite the fact that many of the countries have already achieved universal access, but we also cannot remember, and we also cannot ignore many countries that still have this unfinished agenda of electricity or modern energy access, so to speak. So these are like one of the top priorities that we want to address in the region. Second point I would like to highlight is the chart about the dependency of fossil fuels on fossil fuels of the economies. If we look at the installed capacity, total installed capacity of power generation assets in the Pacific, which comes to approximately 1,700 megawatt, 2/3 of that, roughly speaking, comes from fossil fuels. And that accounts for somewhere between 1% to 8% of GDP in terms of just the fuel bill that these countries need to pay for generating power. And if we include the transport sector, those figures could be even higher than 20% of GDP. So reducing the dependency on fossil fuels is definitely a very key challenge that we think is a matter of urgency. And especially in times like this with high energy prices, this becomes even more pressing to pursue this decarbonization agenda. And then third issue I would like to highlight, which is perhaps not very clear from this slide, but nevertheless very important, is that the region is very susceptible to natural disasters. Many people already mentioned this, so I don't need to repeat that. But just suffice to say that this region has 8 of 20 most impacted countries in terms of natural disasters, in terms of average GDP. They are in this region, and so therefore this is a very significant issue that we are trying to tackle. Good news, I think, is that the governments are not sitting in idle, and also the leadership in the region is not sitting in idle. There are many very important strategies that have already been mentioned by previous speakers, including the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, various climate commitments such as NDCs and LTSs that the governments have adopted, and also FSRIP, Framework for Energy Security and Resilience in the Pacific. All of these feature energy as a key ingredient to pursue the climate goals in the region. And therefore, there are founding leadership authorizing environment within which we could operate, which is very good. And also, as you see from this slide, many countries have very bold and ambitious targets in terms of the share of renewable energy that they would like to see in their power systems, economies, and so forth. So this is also very, very good news to build on. I think the challenge that for us is how to translate those visions and goals into implementable programs, projects of activities. And I think that's where the World Bank is trying to come in. We are not sitting in idle because we see that the climate change impacts particularly the low-income countries and the poor. Within those countries, they are disproportionately hit by the climate disasters, related disasters, and therefore we take it that we really do need to prioritize this. And for that reason, the World Bank has adopted a climate change action plan covering 2021 to 2025 with strengthened diagnostics and increasing attention to climate financing. All 35% of our financing should go to climate-related activities. And also, we are facilitating transitions in major systems that account for 90% of greenhouse gas emissions, and energy, of course, is one of them, which is very key. I think I'll probably skip this slide in the interest of time, but just I would like to mention how we approach our energy transition. We start from the upstream engagement, looking at the policy and regulatory environment. We want to really make sure that there is a foundation of building blocks in place, such as the enabling environment for bringing in investments. System planning should be solid, financially cost recovering tariff regimes, collection regime, well-performing entities, and so on. I mean, these are really building blocks, so to speak. That's really needed. And then building on that, we invest in clean energy efficiency solutions, start decarbonizing with the power systems, energy systems, and then extending that to the other systems, such as transport and industries. And we also want to make sure that this transition happens in a just and equitable manner. So we really care about just transition as well. Applying this kind of framework to the Pacific, all the work we do in the Pacific, I just would like to mention a few things. In some countries where access remains a challenge, I would like to highlight perhaps PNG, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and some states within Micronesia, which may be of interest to this audience. We do support our governments to start thinking about the comprehensive integrated planning to support electrification efforts. And that's like a first stage of transition, so to speak, from the traditional biomass and traditional energy use to modern energy services. So that's one transition that Pacific Island countries will need to make. And then, of course, where we do have performing entities, institutions, we support doing further capacity buildings and institutional development, data management that we are collaborating with the Pacific community, disaster assistance management program with the Pacific Power Association and the like. We come up with those programs to make sure that the environmental factors are there in place. And building on which we also provide investment financing to clean energy sources, solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, and the like, depending on the least cost options available to particular environment within which we are investing. And we have several examples listed. Probably you can see quicker than I can read, so I'm not going to read all of them. But we have projects across the spectrum of renewable energy sources and network reinforcements and the like. And also we are starting to adopt battery energy storages as well. And then coming to other non-power sector related decarbonization, we are also looking at transport sector decarbonization, looking at e-mobility potential, what sort of policies will need to be in place before this e-mobility can be scaled up. So we are looking at those aspects across the region as well with our transport colleagues. And this map shows some of the projects we have in the region, just to give you a flavor of where we are active in. And in conclusion, so I would like to say thank you again for this event, which is timely. I also mentioned that the financing needs and investment needs in the region to support those transitions, two-stage transition in some countries, are really huge. We are talking about over billions to tens of billions of investments that are needed in the energy sector alone to facilitate this transition. So far, I think we've only seen in good years, maybe we have about 100 million from all donors collected in the Pacific. So it's a fraction of financing that is really needed to make this transition happen. So there is a need to a concerted effort by all parties to work on this very important agenda to make sure that the power system is carbon free. Transport systems are also moving in that direction. And I think the event like this, we can